Kyle brought me to a banquet, and I ended up in a fight with his first love. He yanked me out of the chaos. I glared at him, my hair a tangled mess. Are you taking sides? He stayed silent. I pulled off my ring and threw it at his face. I'm the one dumping you. 1. I'm Kyle Mitchell's kept woman, a canary in his gilded cage. I've been with him for 3 years. He's got the looks, the money, and the charm. He's generous with me too. His only rule? No kissing scenes in my acting career. Because of that, I've missed out on some roles and earned the nickname Fake Prude from some people. But I never cared. I've always been well-behaved and never caused him trouble. Until now. Even I didn't expect that the first time I caused trouble, it would be a disaster. I got into a fight with his freshly returned first love. 2. It all started when Kyle asked me to accompany him to a banquet. I never fit in with these high society circles, so I wanted to decline. But after 3 months away on location for a shoot, I genuinely missed him. So I went. As expected, I ran into people I didn't want to see. I instinctively tried to avoid them, but they seemed intent on seeking me out. I'd stepped into the garden for some air when Lucy Young and Gloria Adams followed me. Lucy was Kyle's childhood sweetheart. Her family had moved overseas a few years back for business, but had recently returned. Gloria, on the other hand, was my archenemy. She'd been known to buy smear campaigns and gossip to ruin my reputation. Who would have thought these two actually knew each other? I sat on a bench, unwilling to engage, while Gloria folded her arms and threw shade. Isn't this Brian's engagement party? How is just anyone allowed in? Lucy glanced at me, her tone indifferent. Didn't you drag me out here to say something? That's it. Gloria grinned at her obsequiously. Don't rush, Lucy. It's so stuffy inside. We might as well enjoy the fresh air while we chat. Lucy said nothing and leaned casually against the fountain. Lucy, are you and Kyle planning an arranged marriage? Gloria asked. Lucy nodded slightly. Something like that. That's fantastic. A perfect match. Some people really should take a hint and step aside. Lucy remained silent. Gloria kept talking, but I'd stopped listening. I turned to leave, but her next words made me freeze. Some people not only can't hold their own, but come from messed up families. Remember that construction project disaster? It cost so many people their jobs. Honestly, the fact the person in charge only broke a leg is karma catching up. I stopped in my tracks, turned back, and slapped her twice. Gloria clutched her face and glared at me. Heather Knight, are you crazy? I sneered. Talking behind my back is one thing. Saying it to my face. Did you think I wouldn't hit you? Lucy frowned at me. Heather, this is Brian's family's home. Have you considered the consequences of such behavior? I shot her a cold glare. Lucy, if people said those things about your parents, I hope you'd be calm enough to weigh the consequences first. Lucy said nothing, but Gloria reached out to pull my hair. We started brawling. Somehow Lucy got involved too. By the time Kyle and the others arrived, the three of us were in an all-out fight. Kyle's face was dark as he pulled me out of the chaos. I was a mess, while Lucy looked much better off. I glared at Kyle. Are you taking sides? He frowned but said nothing. I pulled off my ring and threw it at his face. I'm the one dumping you. Then, holding back my tears, I ran outside and jumped into a taxi that had just pulled up. But as soon as I sat down, I couldn't hold it in anymore. The tears came, and a wave of overwhelming grievance washed over me. I'd just wrapped up filming yesterday, and had come to see him full of longing. Yet I barely got to exchange a few words with him before getting humiliated. And he took their side. My phone buzzed nonstop. It was Kyle calling. I answered and went on the offensive. The house in South Bay is in my name. Move out within a week. Before he could respond, I hung up and blocked him on everything. Stupid man. It's over between us. 3. I didn't go back to South Bay Court. Instead, I checked into a random hotel. After taking a shower and cooling down, I started to sense something was off. A kept woman who dares to kick out her benefactor. I must be the first. I've become bolder with Kyle these days, even though at the beginning, I was the meek and submissive one. The first time I met Kyle was at a cocktail party. My agent had forced me to attend to curry favor with some big-name directors and investors. My family used to be well off, but back then, my dad's construction project ran into trouble. Not only did he lose a leg, but he also had to use all our savings to compensate the workers. We were drowning in debt, and my parents were constantly stressed out. I wanted to help but was duped by a talent scout into signing a predatory contract. With no resources, I was even dragged into drinking parties. I couldn't afford to breach the contract, so I pretended to be sick or played dumb to dodge them a few times. Until that time, I had no choice. When I pushed open the door of the private room, there were several middle-aged men inside. Kyle, sitting at the head of the table, stood out like a breath of fresh air. But just as I arrived, he got up to leave. In a panic, I followed him. I asked, "Sir, can I go with you?" He towered over me, looking down. "Why? Do I look like an easy target?" Among that group, he seemed like the least approachable, but I couldn't say that. I shook my head and replied earnestly, "You're the most handsome." Kyle let out a dry laugh. "I know." Sensing his impatience, I quickly added, "You look like a good person." Amused, he raised an eyebrow. "Then you're mistaken." He walked away, and my agent dragged me back into the room. Inside, they forced me to drink a lot of alcohol. When one pudgy director placed his hand on my thigh, I struggled and accidentally knocked over a glass. He slapped me, furious, accusing me of being ungrateful, and tried to tear off my clothes. In desperation, I grabbed a broken glass and stabbed his thigh. Afterward, I was sure I'd end up in jail. Then the door opened, and Kyle stood in the doorway. His gaze swept across the room, and the pig-like squealing from the director abruptly stopped. "Didn't you say you wanted to come with me? What are you waiting for?" I dropped the shard and rushed into his arms, trembling so much I couldn't stand straight. He carried me out. 4. Kyle took me back to South Bay Court. That night, I had already showered but didn't dare leave the bathroom. I overheard him on the phone outside, dealing with the aftermath of the incident. When his voice finally quieted, I wrapped a towel around myself and stepped out. He lounged lazily on the sofa, a few buttons undone on his white shirt, revealing glimpses of his chiseled collarbone. Gathering my courage, I walked up to him and dropped the towel, not daring to meet his eyes. He stood, picked up the towel, and draped it back over me, teasing, "Young but already full of tricks." My face burned with embarrassment. I stammered, I've never been with anyone. I don't know the process." "Look at me." Clutching the towel tightly, I mustered my courage to meet his gaze. His eyes were calm, laced with faint amusement, charming yet dangerous. "You trust me this much? Not afraid I'm worse than them?" Startled, I quickly flattered him. "No way. Handsome people are always kind." He chuckled, pulling me closer and kissed me. It was my first kiss, leaving my head spinning. His thumb brushed gently over my lips as he murmured, "Go to sleep. Can you sleep alone?" Dazed, I nodded. That's how you respond to someone." The warning in his tone made me panic. I hugged him tightly. "No, I'll only sleep if you hold me." Satisfied, he tucked me into bed, then left to make more calls. Half an hour later, he returned and held me as we slept. Over the next few days, I anxiously checked the news, but nothing about me surfaced. A week later, my unfair contract was terminated. Kyle arranged for me to join a new agency with a competent manager. As for the director who tried to exploit me, he disappeared from the industry. In these 3 years, Kyle has always provided me with the best opportunities. I steadily rose from a nobody to a second-tier actress. My family's debts were cleared, and my parents opened a small shop back home. Everything seemed to be improving, but deep down, I knew it was all falling apart because I was sinking deeper into Kyle. He was my benefactor, yet I couldn't help but treat him as my lover. When did it start? I couldn't pinpoint it. Falling for Kyle was far too easy. 5. The next morning, I woke to hundreds of missed calls, most from my manager, Samantha. Not knowing what had happened, I quickly called her back. Her booming voice jolted me awake. "Finally, do you know you've caused a storm? What exactly happened last night?" Still groggy, I glanced at the trending topics. #Heather slaps Gloria. #Heather get out of the entertainment industry. #Heather quit showbiz. The fight with Gloria had been caught on video, but only the part where I suddenly attacked her. Closing my eyes, I explained everything to Samantha, including my breakup with Kyle. After all, I no longer had his backing. Samantha went silent for a moment before sighing. Take a few days to rest. Avoid the news. I'll figure something out. After hanging up, I scrutinized the trending video. It was shot from a discreet angle, clearly premeditated. Even Lucy, standing nearby, was cropped out, leaving only me and Gloria in the frame. The comments were overwhelmingly critical. Heather looks vicious. How dare she hit someone? Did she think no one would expose her? She's got a sugar daddy, doesn't she? No acting skills, yet her career keeps soaring. Insider scoop, she's just a stand-in. The real deal's back, so she got dumped. The talk about me being a stand-in? That was pure nonsense. Back when I started dating Kyle, he was so good to me that it made me uneasy. Once, after he picked me up from a dinner party, I drunkenly asked if I looked like someone he knew. He wrapped his arms around me and flicked my forehead. Addicted to acting? A stand-in? I don't do that. Emboldened, I asked if there was anyone else in his life. He scoffed. Do I look like I have the time? Satisfied with his answer, I felt happy for a long time. Maybe Kyle didn't love me deeply. Perhaps it was just novelty or laziness to find someone new. But during our time together, there was never a third party. I could live without love, without being someone's first choice. But I wouldn't lose my dignity. 6. Because of the sudden wave of negative news, a scheduled variety show appearance was also canceled. I've been staying in the hotel every day, too afraid to go out because of the black fans. 2 years ago, I played a deranged villain, a character both beautiful and crazed, which I portrayed so vividly that netizens claimed it didn't even look like acting. What I didn't expect was that some people would conflate the character with the actor. During that time, while I was recovering from an injured leg, someone actually threw a hornet's nest at me, hoping to disfigure me. Luckily, Kyle arrived quickly. He used his designer suit, worth tens of thousands, to set the hornets on fire and drive them away. I shake my head to dispel the thought. Why am I thinking about him again? I check my missed calls and WeChat messages. They're all words of encouragement and comfort from friends, but Kyle isn't among them. That's when I remember. I blocked him on every platform. I throw my phone away, angry at myself. If he wanted to find me, he could. He's more than capable. If he doesn't, it's because he doesn't care. Sitting by the window, I feel conflicted and ridiculous. I know it's impossible, but deep down, I still hold on to hope. I keep thinking, he must have liked me a little, right? After all, there was that one family reunion night when he came to keep me company, braving the harsh winter cold. The first New Year's I spent with Kyle, I couldn't go back to my hometown because of a tight schedule. I stayed at South Bay Garden instead. On New Year's Eve, I was half asleep when I heard the door open. Startled, I jumped out of bed, grabbed a table lamp, and cautiously opened the door. Kyle stood by the entryway, snowflakes still clinging to his shoulders. He looked at the lamp in my hands and raised an eyebrow. Is this how you welcome me on New Year's? I dropped the lamp and jumped into his arms. I wanted to ask why he suddenly came, but I figured he wouldn't want to answer. So I changed my words. How is it that I think of you, and you appear? He carried me to the bedroom and teased. Let me see where you're thinking of me. Outside, the cold wind howled, but inside it was warm and steamy. When he came out of the shower, I was so tired I was almost asleep. In my haze, he slipped a red envelope under my pillow and kissed my forehead. Heather, Happy New Year. That was my first New Year without my parents, but I wasn't lonely at all. 7. I stayed in the hotel for 3 days. I planned to go out to buy some things and take a walk, but Samantha's message made me give up. The news about me hitting Gloria had been brewing for days and hadn't died down. Now new dirt on me had surfaced. The director I stabbed years ago came forward, accusing me of trying to seduce him for resources, only to abandon him for a wealthier benefactor. He didn't dare name the benefactor, but claimed he had been suppressed and blacklisted for years, listing various proofs, mixing lies with truth. Samantha was overwhelmed. She couldn't handle this on her own. Heather, can't you just reach out to Kyle? Apologize to him? This is something he could settle with a snap of his fingers. I stayed silent, my nose stinging with the threat of tears. This kind of baseless news wasn't new to me. In the past, it would have been handled before it spiraled. But this time, it only kept escalating. I whispered, he won't care anymore. He's getting married. Cutting things off with me is exactly what he wants. Samantha sighed. If this situation can't be resolved positively, you might not get any work for a long time. It's okay, Samantha. I'll post a clarification soon. People can believe it or not. I don't want to get caught in an endless cycle of proving myself. Thank you for everything these past few years. I'm sorry for dragging you into this. Samantha comforted me a bit, saying she'd do her best. But I knew it would be tough. I looked at the news. It was full of insults. Why hasn't this disgraceful celebrity been banned yet? So disgusting. I've been saying she has a sugar daddy. With her acting skills, there's no way she got this far on her own. Why isn't her sugar daddy helping her now? Guess he's tired of her. I'm curious, who's her sugar daddy? He must be blind. Didn't they say he has a first love? Is she the mistress? Her dad's a shady contractor too. Like father, like daughter. There were some defending me, but their voices were drowned out in the sea of hate. I logged into Weibo and typed a statement. Hello everyone. I'm Heather. I apologize for taking up public resources with personal matters, but since this issue has escalated, I hope everyone can discern the truth. First, I have no relationship with Director Walker and did not seduce him. When I first entered the industry, I was naive and tricked into signing an exploitative contract. My manager forced me to accompany clients. Director Walker tried to take advantage of me, and in self-defense, I stabbed his leg with a glass shard. That's how I escaped. Since then, he's targeted other young newcomers. I don't know how many innocent girls there have been, but I personally saved 2 of them. I'm not sharing this to seek sympathy, only to expose the truth. To the girls I saved, you don't need to speak up for me. Such disgusting matters aren't worth revisiting. Second, any criticism, please direct it at me. Leave my family out of it. They've done nothing to anyone. If you can't control your words, I sincerely hope everything you say bounces back to you. Lastly, I've never been a mistress or a stand-in. I'm also now single. Thank you for taking the time to read this. 8. I drifted off and found myself dreaming. Back when my career was just taking off, Samantha landed me a role in a film that became a massive hit. Even though I was only a supporting character, the role was incredibly popular. Riding on the momentum, she got me into variety shows and ad campaigns. During a dinner with investors, I bumped into an old acquaintance, Walker, the director. He had stopped directing and become a producer, even changing his name. That evening, I happened to witness a young woman rush out of his private room, clothes disheveled. I shielded her behind me, raising my phone to record him. The girl told me there was another victim still inside. I got them both out. Walker didn't dare touch me. He knew Kyle had my back. I understood that standing up to him might cause trouble for Kyle. If he chose not to help me, I could be in serious danger. But in that moment, I couldn't overthink it. If I hadn't come across the situation, I wouldn't have intervened. But to see it and do nothing, that would haunt me for the rest of my life. Those 2 girls disappeared from the public eye afterward. They quit the industry. Later, I told Kyle about what happened, expecting a lecture. Instead, he chuckled and said I'd grown a spine. His only advice was not to act alone next time because even a cornered dog will bite. I was indeed scared after the fact, but a strange sense of defiance had settled in me. That defiance, it all came from Kyle. Back when I was new to the industry, unknown, without any status, and when my relationship with Kyle wasn't public, I was often bullied on set. I didn't want trouble, so I thought, what's the harm in swallowing my pride? Words don't leave scars. One time, Kyle came to visit me on set and overheard someone berating me. He called the crew member over and made me curse them out in return. I was hesitant at first, but he gave me a starting line, and I just went off following his lead. I got so into it that he had to pull me away eventually. That day, he watched me with an amused expression. Planning to bottle it all up until you get vocal nodules? He teased. I'm not here every day. If someone bullies or insults you, fight back. And if you can't tell me, I don't let you suffer, so why are you letting others push you around? That version of Kyle, standing there with his clear, handsome features and confident gaze, left a mark on my heart. It felt like my heart split open, spilling out an overwhelming flood of love. 9. My thoughts were interrupted by Samantha's phone call, which woke me up. My face was damp, as if I had been crying in my sleep. I wiped my face and answered the phone, only to hear Samantha's barely contained excitement. "Heather, my darling, are you sure you're not misunderstanding your relationship with Kyle?" I blinked, confused. "What are you talking about? Have you checked the internet yet? Go on Weibo. Kyle just went on a rampage defending you. He's so amazing I could die. If he proposes to you, you have to say yes, okay? I'm begging you. I'll eat vegetarian forever if it means you two stay together." Before I could process her words, she hung up. Still bewildered, I opened Weibo and saw the trending topics had completely shifted. Hashtag Sugar Daddy Kyle. Hashtag Kyle roasts haters. Hashtag Kyle's comebacks are legendary. Hashtag Kyle don't love too hard. The top comment under my statement was from Kyle's official account, verified as part of Mitchell Group. "You've got time to write essays but not to unblock me? Breaking up? Heather, you've got some nerve." Seeing his comment sent a chill down my spine. I could practically picture him gritting his teeth as he typed it. Curious, I checked the trending topics. It turned out Kyle had been verbally sparring with trolls online and winning spectacularly. Troll. She flirts with everyone and dares to block Kyle? Kyle. Jealous she didn't block you first? Troll. She claims others tried to exploit her. Look at her. Who'd even want to? Kyle. Let me see what you look like first. Troll. Even if the casting couch rumors are fake, she still bullied her co-stars, right? Kyle. I told her to do it. Got a problem? Come to me. Troll. Breaking up? As if the guy was serious about marrying her. He was just playing around. Kyle. If I don't marry her, should I marry you? Troll. This account is too active. It's probably a bot she hired. Kyle. Green Summit Tower. Tell reception your username. And let's talk in my office. Troll. Heather is disgusting. She's shameless and trashy. Kyle. At Scott, find all their info in 10 minutes. Kyle had turned the situation upside down. Trolls were silenced, leaving the online battlefield in stunned silence. Meanwhile, fans were celebrating wildly. Kyle protecting his wife is the stuff of legends. Those waiting to see Heather fail? Joke's on you. Kyle, I'm here. Who dares insult my wife? Imagine the god-tier looks their kids will have. I stared at my screen, dumbfounded, a smile tugging at my lips. Then a new notification popped up. Open the door. I froze. Tossing my phone aside, I peered through the peephole. Kyle was standing right outside. 10. My heart pounded wildly as I opened the door. Kyle lowered his gaze to look at me, devastatingly handsome as always. I wanted to speak, but tears uncontrollably streamed down my face. I stood there teary-eyed, staring at him. He paused for a moment before raising his hand to wipe away my tears. His movements were gentle, but his words were sharp. I haven't even said anything yet, and you're already crying. Quite the expert in emotional blackmail, aren't you? He pulled me inside and sat down on the sofa. I snuck a glance at him, feeling both happy and stubbornly defiant. Why are you here? I asked. He tossed his suit jacket aside, rolling up his sleeves as he replied. Let's start by discussing your claim that I'm biased. The mention of it reignited my frustration. I scooted further away, muttering under my breath. You were biased. What's there to discuss? He let out a cold laugh. Biased? And when have I ever not sided with you? You were so caught up in the fight. You didn't even notice Gloria's nails were about to scratch your face. If I hadn't pulled you out, your face would have been ruined. You cry for an entire day over a single pimple. If your face had been scratched, wouldn't you flood the house with your tears? I froze, not expecting this reason. For a moment, I felt guilty, but didn't want to admit defeat. Then why didn't you explain it at the time? Kyle scoffed again. Was it that I didn't explain, or that you didn't listen? When I came after you, you'd already run off. Funny how you're never that quick to find me otherwise. And now you're kicking me out. Heather, you're the first person I've met who kicks out their sponsor halfway through the relationship. My confidence faltered, but I stubbornly kept arguing. You didn't come looking for me these past few days. When I was being attacked online, you didn't step in either. You were too busy arranging a marriage alliance. So why are you here now? I won't be a mistress. He suddenly yanked me toward him, gripping my face with his hand, his expression dark. Who told you I was arranging a marriage? Are the resources I've given you so bad? Or the gifts I've given you so cheap that you think I'd sell my marriage for leverage? But everyone's saying, you'll listen to what they say, but not to me? Is your skin itching for punishment? I shrank back, escaping his hold. You still haven't explained where you've been these past few days. He sighed as he looked at me. I went to the US for work. A project collapsed, and I had to step in. At first, I didn't intervene because I knew Gloria had gotten close to Director Walker. I was waiting for her to reveal everything, so we could take them all down at once. These days, I had bodyguards stationed near your hotel in case any trolls came to harass you. Anything else you want to ask? Go ahead, ask it all at once. Finally, I voiced the question buried deepest in my heart. Will you marry me? Or do you just want me to stay your trophy girlfriend forever? Kyle fell silent. My heart sank. 11. Then he said, are those two things mutually exclusive? If you want to stay, stay. If you want to go out, go out. When have I ever stopped you? I lowered my gaze. But the couple's ring I chose, you've never worn it. Kyle picked up his suit jacket from the side and pulled two matching rings out of the left chest pocket. It was a pair I had stumbled upon while walking the red carpet at Cannes. Not from any brand, just handmade by an old woman selling them on the street. Inexpensive but unique. I had loved them instantly and bought them. Since then, I always wore mine when we were together, but he never wore his. I didn't wear it because you didn't want to go public. And this ring is so distinctive, I couldn't risk anyone noticing. So I've kept it in my pocket every day. He got up and walked toward me, his gaze deep and piercing. I wasn't sure if you wanted to get married, so I tried to hint by taking you to engagement parties to see your reaction. If you didn't want to, we could wait a couple more years. But look at you, using all your temper against me. You're polite to everyone else, but why do you bare your fangs at me? Do you only bully those you're close to? His tone grew softer, and when I looked up, I met his intense, smoldering eyes filled with warmth. He pulled me into his arms, gently patting my back. Stop fussing now, sweetheart. I hugged him back, softly murmuring my assent. I couldn't describe what I felt. It was as though I had been blind to something all along. For years, I had been so spoiled by his favoritism that it bred a possessiveness in me. I couldn't tolerate even the slightest sign that he might stop favoring me. Not even once. I had to admit I had become willful because of his love. 12. The next morning, Samantha texted me. Not only was the variety show still on, but several new endorsements had also come through. I snuck a look at the trending topics. Most of them were still speculating about the aftermath of Open the Door. The PR team had shifted all focus toward our couple narrative, leaving the previous scandals untouched, likely waiting for the right moment. Kyle and I returned to South Bay Court, holding hands openly. There was no need to hide anymore. Paparazzi followed us, but they were surprisingly respectful, and Kyle didn't seem to mind. I thought yesterday's drama had been resolved, but when we got home, I was in for another shock. Kyle's belongings were completely gone. His clothes, watches, accessories, toiletries, everything. At first, I thought we'd been robbed, and even wondered why the thief only took his stuff. Kyle looked at me with an amused expression. Didn't you give me a week to move out? How could I dare disobey? Who knows when my things might end up on the street? After all, I didn't pay rent or hold a deed. What right do I have to live in this mansion? The sarcasm in his tone made me want to disappear. He had moved out to avoid making me uncomfortable. This whole act was just to tease me. Knowing I was in the wrong, I cooperated, tugging on his sleeve and pleading for him to move back. By that afternoon, everything was back in its place. I even reorganized his ties by color to show my sincerity. Kyle left for the office, while I stayed home to prepare for my upcoming variety show appearance. Then Lucy called, inviting me to dinner. 13. Given the recent flood of news about me, Lucy personally came to pick me up at South Bay Court, which left me a bit flattered. Kyle said you've been ambushed by trolls before, so it's better to be cautious. she explained. Her sudden shift in attitude caught me off guard. I couldn't figure out what her true intentions were until we sat down in the restaurant, and she raised her glass to toast me. Heather, I previously believed some slanderous rumors about you, which caused misunderstandings and harm. I want to sincerely apologize for that today. It suddenly became clear. Gloria must have spoken ill of me, planting preconceived notions in Lucy's mind. I'm not someone who holds grudges, so I clinked glasses with her without hesitation. Over dinner, I realized Lucy was genuinely easy to get along with, straightforward, honest, and very much on the same wavelength as me. Curious, I asked why she had such a sudden change of heart. She explained that she'd read through the online hate comments from the past few days and saw right through them. Most were baseless and clearly orchestrated. She even laughed about those comments, suggesting Kyle saw me as her replacement. Lucy, Kyle, and the two Bryan brothers had grown up together. Their families were close, and she and Kyle shared nothing but pure camaraderie. There was a time when their parents wanted them to marry, but Lucy, who was career-driven and indifferent to marriage, didn't mind. It seemed logical if it could help their families. She assumed Kyle felt the same, but when she realized he had no intention of going through with it, she let it go. Moreover, during a recent set visit, she noticed Gloria acting like a diva. While many crew members were sympathizing with me over the recent news, they praised my kindness and camaraderie on set. It made her see things differently. I couldn't help but feel that being kind to others does eventually bring kindness back to you. After dinner, Lucy planned to call a driver, but we unexpectedly ran into Kyle and the two Bryan brothers just as they were leaving another restaurant. I quickly apologized to Bryan for the fight during his engagement party, admitting it was inappropriate. He nodded politely, brushing it off with a few words before leaving. Jack invited us to his bar, though his eyes were fixed on Lucy the entire time. Sensing the awkward tension between them, I loudly interjected, "Lucy's had a few drinks, so maybe it's best to call a driver for her." Jack immediately stepped forward. "I'll take her." Ignoring whatever might unfold between them, I pulled Kyle away. On the way home, I asked Kyle, "Is there something going on between those two?" Kyle toyed with my hand, his tone playful. "Can you focus a bit more on me? They'll figure it out themselves. You don't need to meddle." I looked at him and teased, "Don't you ever get tired of this?" He paused for a moment, raised the partition in the back seat, pulled me into his arms, and replied in a dangerously low tone, "Are you getting tired of me?" "Heather, I think you're just itching for trouble." Wrapping my arms around his neck, I grinned mischievously. "Not tired. Not in this lifetime." He didn't say much, just gave a light chuckle. But in the bedroom that night, I was left crying and screaming until morning. 14. 3 days later, the PR team released an official statement debunking all the previous slander, backing every claim with clear evidence. Meanwhile, Gloria's scandals exploded all over the internet. Not only was she exposed for being a kept woman and colluding with director Walker, but she was also implicated in orchestrating arrangements for young women being exploited. The evidence was airtight, leaving her no chance of recovery. Watching the full footage of the infamous fight, I couldn't help but think Lucy had it rough. I'd never understood how she got dragged into the chaos until I saw Gloria pulling her in to shield herself, leaving Lucy to take several slaps meant for me. Laughing, I sent her an apology via WeChat. On Weibo, the tide had completely turned. People who had previously insulted me were now apologizing. The waves of public opinion didn't excite me much, but as I scrolled through the posts, I stumbled upon a photo. It was a slightly blurry picture of me in a flimsy dress, suspended in a harness for a wire stunt, while Kyle stood nearby holding a puffer jacket, his expression soft and gentle. The caption read, "I'm crying. Kyle was already head over heels for her 2 years ago." Looking at the photo, I instantly remembered the moment. It was taken during my first 6 months in the industry. In the freezing temperatures of 3 or 4 degrees below zero, I had to wear thin period costumes for outdoor scenes, with fans blowing to create an ethereal effect. After a few days of this, I fell sick with a fever and called Kyle in a daze. He came that same night. The next day, I happened to have no scenes to shoot, so he stayed at the hotel and took care of me. Once I recovered a bit, I still had a few outdoor scenes left to film. Not wanting to delay production as a newbie, I insisted on pushing through. Kyle didn't say much, but he stayed by my side every day, holding that puffer jacket for me. After every take, he would wrap me in his arms in the jacket. He stayed for 3 days until my scenes were done, then left. That winter was bitterly cold, but all I remember was his warm, dry embrace. Looking at the photo, I smiled like an idiot and quietly saved it. 15. As the media frenzy gradually died down, everything seemed to settle. Work resumed as usual, and my next commitment was to participate in a popular outdoor reality show. While I was getting my makeup done, a fire alarm suddenly went off backstage, accompanied by spreading smoke. The area quickly descended into chaos. Amid the shoving and pushing, someone dragged me into a small storage room. It was Gloria. She wore a hooded sweatshirt, her face pale and bruised at the corner of her mouth. I discreetly observed her. She wasn't holding anything, appearing as if she only wanted to talk. "Heather, you're really proud of yourself, aren't you? Resources, fame, love. Everything's going your way," she said, blocking the door. I found a box to lean on, keeping some distance. "There's nothing to be proud of. Work life, they're just like this." Gloria suddenly laughed, but her laughter turned into tears. "You probably don't remember me, right? We were part of the same group sent to entertain clients. But in the end, Kyle took you away, and I stayed in that room forever. Sometimes I wonder, if Kyle had chosen me instead, would everything have been different? Do you know how jealous I've been of you? Why do you get everything while I have to endure all of this? Why? I just wanted to earn some money for my brother's medical bills." For a moment, I was dazed. I truly didn't remember Gloria. There were a few other girls in the private room that night, but I hadn't gotten a clear look at any of them. "How's your brother?" I asked, meeting her gaze. Gloria tilted her head back and wiped her tears. "Dead. He passed away before I could make it big." I sighed as I looked out the window. I guess I was a bit luckier. If I hadn't met Kyle, I might not have even made it to the level of a B-list actress. But one thing's for sure. If I were stuck in the same muck, unable to save myself, I would never drag others down with me. Gloria went silent, perhaps recalling the many girls she had drawn into that room, who would remain trapped there forever. "You don't understand," she said. "If I hadn't done it, I'd have been discarded long ago, left to rot in some unknown place." I said nothing, subtly moving toward the door. Gloria watched but didn't stop me. When I opened the door, I heard her sigh. "Some people are just born into different fates," she said. I paused and turned back to look at her. She tossed an envelope at my feet. Wind blew through the window, lifting her long hair. Her eyes were red, but her smile was defiant. "Heather, I truly hate you, but you're the only one who can help me. See, this world is sometimes just that absurd. I don't regret anything, nor will I repent. I just want those bastards dead." With that, she stepped onto a box and leaped out of the window. I was pulled into a warm embrace as I stood there stunned. I didn't know why I was crying, but tears poured down my face. 16. Gloria was gone. The envelope she left me contained a long list. It detailed the individuals involved in the flesh trade over the past several years, spanning exploitative contracts, forced entertainment, and an entire well-established industry chain. I reported it to the police and made the list public, attributing it to Gloria. The revelations sparked widespread attention and significant societal concern. The police quickly launched an investigation, and those involved were brought to justice one by one. Many began to mourn Gloria, while others remained unsympathetic. I didn't continue to follow the public discourse. I hadn't lived through her pain, nor could I condone her actions. But I hoped that the girls trapped in those rooms that night would find their freedom. 17. Life and work continued as usual. Half a year later, I won the Best Actress award. What I didn't expect was that Kyle would be the one presenting it to me. The entire room erupted when he appeared. Not just fans but even the actors and hosts, all indulging in the romance rumors. Handing me the trophy, his eyes glimmered with a smile. "Congratulations, Heather. Wishing you a brilliant career ahead." Cheers and applause thundered again. I accepted the trophy, feeling my eyes heat up. After a moment, I delivered my speech. When I walked off stage with a male co-actor, he instinctively reached out to steady me. Kyle gave him a single glance, and the actor immediately pulled back his hand, wide-eyed, and scurried off. I walked over to Kyle and descended the stairs with him. Amused, I asked, "Why'd you scare him like that?" Kyle put an arm around me and kept walking, his expression neutral. Scare him? I just noticed how pale his hands were. Me? I sneaked a glance at the trending topics and, unsurprisingly, found them exploding. The moment when the actor retracted his hand had been turned into a looping GIF and was being shared wildly. Sharp-eyed netizens even noticed that my ring wasn't one from the sponsor, speculating whether Kyle had already proposed. In truth, we were already married. Last week, I woke up to find a new ring on my finger, not the pair we had previously purchased. I asked him why he didn't use the original ones, which were one of a kind. While putting on his watch, he replied, "This one is also one of a kind. Don't you like it?" I loved it, but I teased him anyway. "Can we exchange it if I don't?" He chuckled and pinched my waist. "If you grow 10 more fingers today, I'll fill them all." Greedy little thing. That day, a work event delayed me for a bit, so we went to register our marriage early the next morning. After the ceremony, Kyle draped his coat over my shoulders, his eyes soft with a smile. "Let's go home, Mrs. Mitchell." The end. Extras. Male lead's perspective. The little kitten I've been raising has been getting increasingly feisty lately, baring her teeth more often. At least she's finally comfortable with me. Compared to the overly compliant girl, who used to avoid causing trouble at all costs, her current lively attitude is far better. The only headache is that she's taken her acting roles too seriously, completely absorbed in the first love substitute trope. I'll have to ensure she gets fewer scripts filled with such nonsense in the future. After 3 months apart, I finally returned home, only to be pulled aside by Jack for a heart-to-heart before we could exchange more than a few words. So annoying. He's like Lucy for years, but somehow can't muster the courage to say 4 simple words. Serves him right that I'm already married, and he's still single. To give him a push, I deliberately let the news about our family's arranged marriage leak. I have no idea if it helped his case, but it nearly got me into trouble. My kitten was so mad she threw her ring at me and stormed off. By the time I picked up the ring and ran after her, she was already gone. The only call she answered was to tell me to move out. Well, at least she kicked me out instead of silently sulking alone. I wanted to go straight to her, but the project in the US conveniently ran into trouble. Sometimes I wonder why I bother keeping this team around. I flew to the States overnight, leaving instructions for Scott, my assistant, to keep an eye on her. Scott was actually useful for once. He arranged bodyguards as soon as a scandal broke out. I watched the entire video, did some digging on Gloria, and realized she had more tricks up her sleeve. So, I held off on intervening. By now, my kitten was probably crying her eyes out alone in a hotel room. This was tricky. It took days to stabilize the situation before I could fly back to China. I still don't understand how her fans are so weak in online battles. They were completely overwhelmed by haters. A matter this small required me to step in personally. I suggest her fans sign up for a course with me to learn how to deal with trolls. Since her contact information was locked away in a black box, I had no choice but to reach out via Weibo. At least I managed to see her. Her eyes were so swollen from crying that it probably surpassed all her tears combined over the past 3 years. I held back the urge to comfort her right away. If we didn't address this clearly, it would weigh on her mind forever. Watching her both guilty and argumentative, clearly in love, but stubbornly refusing to admit it, was oddly adorable. And also a bit of a headache. She listens to everyone else, but refuses to listen to me. The temper I spoiled her into having? It all comes back to bite me. But at least I managed to coax her in the end. My kitten's smile really is the most beautiful. Extras end.